Okay, what branch of service were you
United States Army.
in? And what were your dates of service?
I entered service officially on May 24th of 1970 and ETS from the military for the last time because I'd gone into the Guard and the Reserves through the period in May of 1977.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Why did you join?
Uh, First off, my brother was a colonel in the Air Force, so we had a little bit of experience with the military, and I always thought the military would be something that I would want to go into. I had a lot of friends that were in the military, and I had started being a competitive shooter at the time, and of course, in the 70s, the military was where you went if you were going to be a competitive shooter, so that's why I chose that.
Perfect. Why did you pick the service branch you joined?
Well, initially, I went into the Air Force and spent a semester in Lincoln in ROTC with the Air Force ROTC. And at the time, I was with the Army officials all the time down on the rifle range, so it was a progression of going, I'm really kind of out of place here. I need to go be with the people I'm going to be with. So that's what I did. I changed and went to Army ROTC.
How old were you?
Oh, well, I was probably 18 when I started college.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Uh, I remember well, first days, there's a lot of dates I could pick out for that. The first day was when, upon graduation, we got commissioned as second lieutenants at that time. So that would be probably the first official time that I was in the military. And my wife and my mother pinned on my officers' lieutenant tags on my shoulders, and I can remember that. But actually, the first real entry into the Army was in the advanced armor class in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And once we got out there, we were in the Army now at that point. So that was probably the first real day.
Tell me about your training.
The training that we had that I went through, and every individual in the military, whether it's Army, Air Force, Navy, whatever, you have an MOS, and you're assigned an MOS, and what that is what you're going to do, what your specialty is going to be while you're in the military. Mine, at the end of ROTC, mine was a 1203, which was a tank commander. And so my training through ROTC was pretty general. That was tactics, learning how to be a good person, doing all the things that you're supposed to do, plus try to get good grades so you could graduate. Uh, we went through basic armor school, which I've brought some pictures of all that. But that was at Fort Knox, Kentucky. That was the home of the the United States Armor groups were all out of Fort Knox at that time. That has since changed. It is now at Fort Benning, Georgia. And what we did was learn tactics, and we had 9 weeks of learning tactics and everything we were supposed to know about an armored vehicle. And there's lots of different kinds of armored vehicles, but that was the first training that we had.
What type of work did you perform while in the service?
What kind of
Work.
work? Uh, After I graduated from Armor Officer Basic class in Fort Knox, Kentucky, I was assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia. And my official title there was shooter instructor. And I became part of the United States Army Marksmanship Unit. And my job was to learn, was actually my job, and everybody else that was assigned there was to be competitive against the Soviet Union. in competition rifle shooting. So that's what we did.
Nice. And where did you serve?
Fort Benning, Georgia for 2 years, and at that time I got out of the active Army, went into the National Guard in Lexington, Nebraska for 9 months, and that was an armored company. And then from there I got transferred with my job down to Garden City, Kansas, and I worked with a drill sergeant unit where we trained troops. And then the last 2 years I was there, I was made commander of a firefighting company.
And did you see combat?
No, I did not.
How did you feel about the enemy that you were fighting?
Well, everything that we learned about the enemy at the time, of course, that was all pre-programmed, so you're taught what they want you to know. But they're just people like we are. They have their beliefs in the way they want to do things, and we have our beliefs the way we want to do things. And the idea is I don't want to hurt anybody on the other side, but on the other side, I don't want them to hurt me either. And I don't want them to hurt my family. I don't want to hurt the United States. So I'm going to do everything to protect the United States.
And did you write home often, or were they like near you?
Well, my folks lived in Lexington, Nebraska. I was in Fort Benning, Georgia, and actually, since I was not in a combat situation, I could get on the telephone and call home anytime I wanted to.
Nice.
And they could come see us, so that worked out real well.
Nice. Did they like bring you stuff when they came and see you?
Oh, sure, they always have a care package. You know, moms are kind of like that.
Yeah.
They got to bring you something that they know you like and haven't had.
What do you think people today should know about what you went through?
Well, for me, I absolutely enjoyed the military. It was very good for me, and it was exactly what I wanted it to be when I got in. I got to be part of the unit that was the top that I could get. I got to meet some really special people. A lot of them are still friends that we communicate, not daily, but we sure communicate together, and they're scattered all over the world. And most of them are my age and are retired, but they've either had a complete military service, went 20 years and retired, or they did like I did and went into a business of some sort and are retiring out of that. I'm not retired yet, but I'm getting close. But the Army was really good for me, and I do regret getting out of the Army when I did. I put in 7 years, not counting ROTC, which is 4 years. If I had it to do all over again, I'd have to think real hard about staying in for the full time.
What were some of your biggest memories?
Well, if I focus just on my active duty period, which was at Fort Benning, Georgia as a shooter, there are a couple of things that will always stand out in my mind. I had been shooting competitively with the University of Nebraska, and I had shot competitively with the Nebraska Civilian Big Board team. In fact, Harold Wanek was the head of our group, and he was a gunsmith here in Aurora, and that's how I first got started. He called me up and says, "You're on the team, come get your equipment," and that's when I was in sophomore in college. So I got to meet him, but I had a number of people that I wanted to emulate with my competitive shooting. Everybody has a hero, and at that particular time I had a couple of heroes. One of them was Gary Anderson from Axtell, Nebraska, and he was a 3-time gold medal winner in the Olympics. And then there was a number of other people that had done very well in competitive shooting, and I got to meet them all, and I got to shoot against them, and that's a highlight. That's one of my highlights, is the day I met all those people all at the same time.
So you met them all in one day.
I met them all in one day. And the second one that stands out was we were in a competition rifle match down at Fort Benning, Georgia. It was an invitational. We had a number of different groups shooting in competition with us. And I had just completed the course of fire that I was on, and my coach at that time, he was Sergeant Martin Gunnarsson, and he was an Olympic gold or bronze medal winner in Tokyo in 1960. So I had some pretty good, interesting people that were helping us. And he came over and he said, "Lieutenant Anderson, you've just set a record."
Oh my goodness.
Which I have brought.
Nice.
So that was pretty exciting.
What did you do?
I shot a perfect score on a course of fire called, well, it was small bore, 50-meter prone, any sights is what it's called. And because of that, they actually gave me 2 records. One as a civilian and one as a military personnel. So
Wow.
I set 2
awesome.
records.
That's really cool.
And that was exciting because I had no idea that I was doing that.
Wow. What was the highest rank you achieved?
Captain.
And how did you stay in touch with your family?
Well, basically telephone. And my parents come to see us. My wife's parents come to see us. Of course, we were only there 2 years, so it wasn't a terribly long time, but pretty easy to get to.
Nice.
And we flew home for Christmas.
What was the food like?
Excellent.
What kinds of food were there?
Well, when we were in training, and again, since we were not combat troops, the only time that we actually did any hard training was just to polish up some of our things that we're supposed to keep track of. PT is a good one. We did a lot of that. But when we did go to the field to do exercises, that's when we ate sea rations. And it's a little bit different. Ours were sea rations. Paul Graham, when he gave his interview, they used MREs when he was in, which was the next step to more modern food. So, and I enjoyed hearing his conversation about that because they had a lot better food than we had. The food that I had, the cans, it was made in Nebraska City, and almost all sea rations were at that time, and the ones I had were from 1945 to 1956, so they were 20 years, 30 years old by the time we got around to eating them. It was still pretty good.
How did everyone entertain themselves?
While I was in Georgia, again, because our unit, we were assigned to a unit that was very small. And it was part of Fort Benning, Georgia, but we were under command from Fort McPherson, Georgia, which was another post at Atlanta. And so then we were a little bit different. We didn't follow absolutely everything Fort Benning did because we weren't a part of Fort Benning. We were just stationed there. So we were a very small group. And as families, we got together in the evenings. We worked together when we were shooting or training or whatever. And a lot of the people we trained, we not only shot competitively ourselves, but we trained the Highway Patrol, the Secret Service. We were the beginning of the snipers, which is now at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. They've got a compound there now where they started at. But a lot of the things we did a lot of things that we didn't talk about. Not that it was secret or anything, it just wasn't necessarily what we were there to do, which primarily was be competitive shooters. But we all got together. The wives they chummed around together, and we chummed around together, and we loved to watch football when it was football season, and we played a lot of hand and eye coordination exercises. That was a requirement on our unit. We had to learn to play ping pong and tennis.
Did you like ping pong?
I'm not very good at it. Tennis I wasn't too bad at, but ping pong is a little bit rough for me.
What was your favorite football team?
Well, when I was at Fort Benning, Georgia, Nebraska was number one, and Oklahoma was number two, and Colorado was number three. And now I don't think that'll ever be like that again. That was really, that was really something. But we were number one. That was the primary thing.
Yeah.
But they had three Big Eight. That was when we had the Big Eight. We had three Big Eight schools that were 1, 2, 3, and that was just unheard of.
Yeah.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. Did you go anywhere on leave?
On leave, well, for us, leave was, again, we were totally different than what a person would be if they were overseas or if they were assigned to a normal duty area. And so that was a little bit different. But let me change that a little bit. We did a number of things that were kind of fun that were part of our job. Instead of going on leave, like what you just asked me, we had weekends off just like today. Just the teachers and you and everybody else, you get a weekend, you go do what you want to do. And that's pretty much what we did. But we had a number of times, because we were shooter instructors, we were supposed to be teachers also. And we were asked by a lot of the universities all over the United States to come to their school and talk to their rifle team.